Welcome. You're in the Beat Sessions, the place for all things music and where we do the listening for you. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about the always charming Ben Folds and this new record, What Matters Most. He released that on June 2nd. This is his fourth solo outing and his follow-up to 2008's Way Too Normal. That's T-O, not T-O-O. Definitely changes the meaning of that title in a very Ben Folds-esque kind of way. And thankfully, we don't have to go that far back since the last time we've heard from Ben on his studio album, but it's been a minute. 2015's So There was a collaboration he did with the Y Music Ensemble. Ben, in the meantime, has been a busy guy. He's got a really cool job. He's the first ever artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra. So he's been doing that since 2017. He also put out a biography back in 2019, A Dream About Lightning Bugs, and he's got a podcast called Lightning Bugs as well, which is really cool. He just brings aboard, different artists, musicians, or actors, whomever it might be. They have great conversation and they end up writing a song. I believe William Shatner was on an episode. His good buddy, the late Bob Saget, was featured on one. Really a lot of cool work that he's doing. And I love what Ben stands for as far as, his personality, his perspective on life. Let me just pull up that album cover again. That's so sweet. Look at that album cover. It's just this adorable older couple in the clouds, just watching something, observing something. It's almost kind of like they're in heaven. I really hope that that's my grandparents. Honestly, Ben has that ability to be so sentimental. He also has the ability to be kind of crass and vulgar. He's also the type of guy that'd be like, hey, they're also up there watching you and your wife have sex or whatever. So it's that dynamic about him, just the ability to see life from so many different angles, to be able to cry, to be able to laugh, to be able to do all the things that run the spectrum of emotion in the human experience. And Ben's music captures that. Lyrically, I love his character studies, the stories that he tells, because they're very vivid. Oftentimes they're really specific, and sometimes it's autobiographical. And I feel in a lot of ways he's got that Gonzo kind of style to him. He'll take something that may have happened in his life, and like Hunter S. Thompson, he'll blow it up into this grand theatrical piece of fiction, but that has a purpose, that has a message. And I think that that's what's so brilliant about Ben and his music. Lyrically, obviously brilliant. Just the man on his piano, he's mesmerizing to listen to. The way he tickles the ivories, there's very few musicians in popular music out there that I think have his talent, his ability. His talents, his current job, I think speak to how solid he is on that instrument. And I've always loved him too, because if you go back to the early days, Ben started off playing bass in the first couple of bands that he was in. So, I admire that, and I've always loved that about him, but I'm really glad he made that decision to just start playing piano, rolling with Ben Folds 5, and then doing his own thing after the breakup of that band. But this guy he's an exceptional artist, and I think that he's one of those guys teaming up with Joe Pisapia on this thing. This is basically his COVID album, so to speak. Joe Pisapia refers to the pandemic as the pandejo. So if you know even just a little bit of Spanish, I thought that was pretty funny. I think that's a good joke. But these guys came together with the intention of writing an album as a gift, as a present. And in a lot of ways, coming 8 years after his last record, it just feels like that no matter what. But this is, call it a COVID record, so to speak, that is very optimistic. This is a record where Ben and Joe have chosen to focus on the shinier things of life. And there's those funny moments, those self-deprecating moments, those, again, Ben is a very well-rounded guy as far as his perspective on life and the way he builds an album. This album, exceptional continuity. I mean, this thing feels so good. And, there's some people out there that maybe have called it a concept album. I'm not going to go there with it, but I think from start to finish, 10 songs, 40 minutes, you have just one of the most exceptional artists that came out of that period of alternative rock in the 90s. I don't mean to pick on Matchbox 20. I listened to their new album that came out last week, and it's good, but it sounds like a Matchbox 20 record. And they're one of those bands that I just didn't get into them that much. I mean, when you have the likes of Ben Folds or Counting Crows, I listened to Third Eye Blind. There were so many different, I guess, kind of pop rock outfits that changed the trajectory of alternative rock and what that was, I guess, in the mid 90s there that, pick and choose, to each their own. I don't think Matchbox 20 is a better or is a bad band, but I just think Ben Folds artistically, lyrically, he's just on a level of brilliance that I don't think many of those musicians from that period really were ever on that same level. He's just he stands alone on his own for a reason. Quite an exceptional musician. This thing, it kicks off with "But Wait, There's More." It's got this like undulating synth to open, playful vocal enters, and then you get this like electric percussion, bit of bass, has this fun little pop to it, and it's just got this nice kind of like musical show tuney feel to it. It's one of the things I love about him. His style. I mean, it's classical music, like just straight classical music, and then it's like jazz, classical pop, musical theater. There's opera, elements of opera that are incorporated into his music, along with rock and roll and soul and all this other stuff. And so I like the way that this thing kicks off with kind of that, kind of like that opening, that grand opening of a musical. It very much has that feel. It kicks in for about 90 seconds for the last bit of the track in the coda there. It kicks in hard. There's a really nice horn arrangement, and it takes on more of that classic pop kind of feel versus the show tuney feel, but really like the way that this thing opens up. Clouds with Ellipses, featuring Dodie, I believe is how you pronounce that artist's name. Gentle piano and vocal on the intro. Nice build in the piano and the melodies, as you'd expect from this thing. The other instrumentation in this thing is sparse, so I really like the way that Ben's vocals get to be the highlight of this particular song. Very pretty melody, and just a focus on, the what life is. It's just kind of the ebb and flow of things, clouds and ellipses. Things come, things go, the good, the bad, the ugly, all those things. Life is still beautiful, and it's nice to have Ben back to remind us of that. I really like the pretty strings that work in on this song, and this is just a fine example of the ways that like he just makes the keys twinkle on the piano. Really a very pretty song. Exhausting Lover is your third song. This is a fine example of Ben and his humor being being downright just kind of raunchy, but I love this song. It's got this synth vocal. It ushers in this really catchy electro pop track, and this is the kind of song too that I think Ben, knowing his audience, knowing that the majority of the people that are listening to him probably have pretty eclectic taste. So I mean, you take on this track that it almost kind of has this kind of like Taylor Swift pop element to it, this electro pop kind of feel to it, and the lyrics about a very interesting one night stand with a very interesting lover. It is just a funny song. I love Ben. I love that he's dropping this kind of stuff on this record to bring that balance that is him. Fragile is your fourth track. It's got this doo-wop piano and bass like right off the bat. I really like the light electric percussion that works in. Pretty string arrangements that work in, giving it this kind of folk feel. I really like the just the Americana element that works into this song, and a pretty love song too. It's just it's about kind of a vulnerable lover who takes so much from his lover, and then he's reminded with the little things of why he's so enamored by her. Your fifth song, Christine from the seventh grade, back to more of that humorous stuff, and I love this song. This might be my favorite song on this record. Ominous piano. You got this acoustic guitar. The piano takes a big moment at the beginning of the track, and then it mellows out, and then you get this acoustic vocal arrangement for a bit. It opens up. It's got a bit of an operatic feel, kind of this like Neapolitan feel, kind of like a Parisian feel as well. It's very worldly in that sense. Think very like European, modern Western Europe, but it's just another funny character study of, this is a song about, especially in COVID, jumping on the internet, and you get into social media and you dig up some of these people that you haven't seen or heard from in decades. I have to pull up the lyrics to these because it's just so funny. He talks like towards the end. It's basically just this very kind of like lost woman who's gone off the deep end. And so he says, the misspellings must be on purpose. We went to a good school, Christine. So what would you imagine that I might take from this deluge of memes with the cryptic dark Bible quotes, guns and dead fetuses? Seriously, Christine, are you okay? So Ben really, I love it. I love that he's able to be funny, but also earnest as far as like, man, it's pretty wild the way Like people are just out there these days, and social media gives us really good insight to that. And I'd say more often than not, probably better to just you know, let those the line at the end of the song I really think sums it up brilliantly. He says, "But if these days, if it's really us and them's, then maybe you should just leave me off both lists." And I'm a big believer in that. I talk about that a lot on the channel. Leave me off both lists. I'm not interested in party politics or us versus thems or any of that stuff. It's not what this record is about. Back to Anonymous is your sixth song, light desert rock style, a little acoustic guitar and piano that trickles in. I really like the way that this song takes on this breezy 70s California kind of feel. It's and I dig the lyrics too. There's this perspective that Ben has as far as at this point in his career being, pretty famous in the 90s. Ben Folds is a band that in America, I still, even with the success of a song like Brick, I don't think they really ever took off the way they did in a lot of other places around the world. But, still pretty well known, pretty visible. I mean, Ben's he's got a look, he's got that shaggy hair. He's got that baby face when he doesn't have a beard. I think most of us could identify Ben if we saw him on the street, but this song is about, moving out of that phase and, not being as famous as he once was, talking about how fame isn't all that it was cracked up to be and how it's kind of nice that he can just cruise down the street these days without anyone really knowing who he is. It's kind of an interesting perspective there. I really dig it. But a really pretty song, and I'd say another one of my favorites. Christine from the 7th grade and Back to Anonymous. That's a really strong stretch there in the middle of the record. Winslow Gardens is your 7th song. I believe Winslow Gardens is a retirement village, and I believe the perspective of this song is this elderly couple, on the back end of their life, trying to just find some type of optimism and happiness in a place like that. I worked in a place like that. My mom ran a couple of retirement villages up in Prescott. She ran a couple of dining rooms in a retirement village, up in Prescott, Arizona. It's actually where I met Henry Louis, an incredible electronic engineer, German sound engineer. Ended up retiring up there. One of the many cool stories that I had from that place. But there was a lot of people that didn't look at that period of their life very fondly. They'd come in and they saw it basically as going out to pasture, as a death sentence. And it was really tough to have conversations with some of those people oftentimes. You'd stop dinner service or lunch service or whatever, and they'd be hanging around. So there was a lot of times where I'd just sit down and have conversations with people and the different perspectives. I'm glad I took that time. And I think that as difficult as the perspective may be for people to take in this song, I think that it goes back to that clouds with ellipses. It's like the ebb and flow of life. And, we're still here. If you still have that person by your side, especially, there's a lot to be said about that, I think. Paddleboat is your 8th song. It's got this like barbershop quartet that opens this thing up. Got some like splashing water in the background. Kind of reminds me of Atlantic City. It made me think of Boardwalk Empire. Steve Buscemi and just kind of the aesthetic that went along with that show. But I really like the acoustic vocal open on this thing. Drums work their way in a really fun, kind of like burning down the house kind of way. It made me think of Talking Heads, and then I thought of U2 quite a bit. Really got a big influence from there, and the feel of the song is great. Lovely build in it. And then What Matters Most, your penultimate track. Big soulful piano riff. The vocal enters, and I love the entrance of the rhythm section in the song. It backs off for a moment, and then just goes right back to work. This is kind of a tough song. It's a gorgeous song to listen to. It's about how Ben found out about Bob. He was out in a storage unit rummaging through some stuff. Gets a message about Bob that he had passed. Really kind of gut wrenching, and this is just another great example of reading about the background of some of these songs, and then you read the lyrics. But I think it's written in such a beautiful way that it's going to resonate with all of us. I think all of us, sadly, in our lives, we have to experience loss. We've been there. We've had that moment where the earth just feels like it's been pulled out from underneath you, and it's just shattering. And there might be something that's there in front of you that just kind of just brings everything full circle and reminds you of all this stuff. And I think that it's a great penultimate track. It's a marvelous moment on this record, and I think it might be one of the better moments from Ben, period, in his entire catalog, whether it's Ben Folds 5, just him solo, collaborations. I really like this song a lot. I think it's definitely one of the better tracks of the year, and just an exceptional example of why Ben is just so damn good. Your final track, Moments, featuring Tall Heights, has got this light rolling up tempo percussion, mellow bass, piano is going to match the drums. Great build and the instrumentation on this thing. Really nice way to close this thing out on the back half, especially. I like the build in this song and the way it closes this thing off. Marvelous to have Ben back as always. Hope you enjoy this record. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it already and that you find this review helpful, please like this video and share it. Subscribe to the channel. Do all the things to help us blow this project up in 2023. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.